We're going to start with a pasuk in Shmos. It's the last two sources on the first page that I sent. You're going to need a lot of chumashim today, Rabosa. You're going to need Breshis, Shmos, Bamidbar, and Dvarim. I think I sent that on the chat. And we're going to see a lot of psukim. So we want to start though with Shmos, and it's the last two sources on the first page. It's the Medrash Rabbah and the Yalkut Shimoni, both of them making the same point, but it's good to see both of them inside. All right, so it's already time. I think we're going to get started. So we want to open up Perek Daled in Shmos, and the context is HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Moshe Rabbeinu having a back and forth about whether Moshe is going or not going to take Klal Yisrael out of Mitzrayim. Okay, and again, one of the amazing things was that Moshe didn't want to go because he was afraid Aaron would be insulted, he would be hurt, because Aaron's been running the show in Mitzrayim, and all of a sudden Moshe is going to come, prancing in and take over from him. And it was only because HaKadosh Baruch Hu says in where is it here? In Pasuk Yud Daled, just if you got Perek Daled open, so you just see in Pasuk Yud Daled. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets Vayicharaf Hashem b'Moshe. Vayomer halo Aaron achicha Levi yadati ki daber yedaberhu v'gam hu yotzei lipratecha. So far, HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered all of Moshe's problems about not being able to speak. So Aaron's going to do it instead of you. And then he adds three words at the end of the pasuk: Bara'ah b'samach libi lo. And I think we've spoken about this in the past. Is that it shows the sensitivity that Moshe Rabbeinu had. He didn't want to go if it was going to hurt Aaron's feelings, and only because HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, "Don't worry." V'ra'ah v'samach belibo, v'racha v'samach belibo. So that shows that Moshe was correct in not wanting to go to hurt Aaron's feelings. And even though Klal Yisrael, the whole geul of Klal Yisrael depends on Moshe going, if it means trampling Aaron, we're not going to do it. And therefore, Kadosh Baruch Hu said, "Don't worry, Aaron's going to be happy." But then it continues, "Vadiberhu l'chol ha'am haya l'chayeh," etc. And then Yud Zayin, "Ve'etamateh zeh tikach biyadecha asher taseh bo et ha'otot." Fine. So now Moshe he's got his marching orders and he's ready to go. And look what it says in Pasuk Yud Ches. So we're in Daled Yud Ches. After Moshe Rabbeinu gets his marching orders, Vayelech Moshe vayoshav el Yeser Chosno, Vayomer lo. What does Moshe say to Yitro? Elchon na v'ashuva el achai asher b'Mitzrayim v'ereh ha'odam chayim. He's asking Yisro permission to go. Elchana v'ashuva, right? Elchana v'ashuva el achai v'ereh ha'odam chayim. Vayomer Yitro leMoshe lech l'shalom. Okay, go. So says the Medrash. And now you're back. I'm on the page. It's the last two sources on document 1, on Hakarat Hatov 1. Ubisha'ah she'amar lo. Everybody see this. The Medrash on this pasuk. Ubisha'ah she'amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'ata lecha ve'eshlachecha el paro amar lo ribon ha'olam eini yachol mipnei shekiblani Yitro upatach li beito v'ani imo kiben. Here's the key line: umisha hu poteach pitcho lechavero nafsho chayev lo. I can't just pick up and leave. He took me in. I owe him. Nafsho chayev lo. Again, Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz makes a big deal about this Hakarat Hatov. He took me in. Nafsho chayev lo. I can't just leave. V'chein atamotze be'elio b'shah shehalach etzel tzarfis ha'almana meis b'na hitchil mitchanein ve'omer hagam al ha'almana asher ani mitgorer ima hareota lahamit et b'na. Like the taina is, she took me in. I lived with her. I lived in her house. So Eliyahu's taina was, how can we do this after what she did for us? Wow, where do we see that? Vayhi na pishnayim beruchacha elai hayalacha leilech etzel avi ve'imo lachayosam kamo shehichya ben achsanya shelo. And yet he went to do mechayim mesim to the child. V'chein Eliyahu hayalo lachos avosav kamo kein hatzarfis el shemosar nafsho al achsanya shelo. His first thought was the person who took care of him, who took him in, who boarded him. L'kach amar Moshe lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, kiblani yitro v'nahag bi kavod, eini holech ela birshuso. Imagine what's going on here. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling Moshe, go redeem Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael has been waiting 210 years to be redeemed. And Moshe says, I can't go without reshus from Yisro, because he took me in. I owe him kavod. I owe him Hakarat Hatov. L'kach ksiva yelech Moshe vayoshav el Yeser Chosno, and only then did he go. Imagine the Hakarat Hatov chiyuv that exists just because Yitro took Moshe in. And the Yalkut says a similar thing. Vayishlach osa Moshe. I'm sorry. Oh no, this is a different one. I'm sorry. This is the Midyanim. I think what I have it on the second sheet. We're going to see that separately. Let me see where I have the rest of that. Right. Okay, that's going to be, yeah. Okay, so let's open up. But to see this last one, we have to open up Bamidbar. Okay, Bamidbar. Bamidbar Perek Lamed Aleph. We're going to read Psukim Aleph to Zion. This is to see the last source on this page. Again, we've already seen from Moshe Rabbeinu the Hakarat Hatov that he has to have for the inanimate objects. Okay? And we also saw how we're going to have a little more Hakarat Hatov to Mitzrayim and to Esav, than more so than Ammon and Moab, because Mitzrayim helped our forefathers. Let's take a look now. It's Perek Lamed Aleph, Bamidbar. Okay, this is where Moshe is being told to, after the Midyanim. Remember, what did the Midyanim do? They hired Bilam. Let's see inside. Lamed Aleph. We'll see the psukim there. Okay. So again, the Midyanim, we have to avenge the Midyanim. We're going to have to kill them out because of the terrible things they did to the Jewish people in the desert. So we have. I'll read the psukim. We're going to see 7 psukim here. We're going to pick up exactly what's going on. Nikom nikmas b'nei Yisrael me'es hamidyanim achar te'asef el hamecha. This is your last assignment. And then you're going to leave the world. But what is it? Avenge the Midyanim. So God is telling Moshe, go avenge the Midyanim. Vayidaber Moshe el ha'am le'mor hechaltzu me'itchem anashim latzava v'yu al Midyan l'teit nikmas Hashem b'Midyan. So notice he's not now when they fought Amalek. When they fought Sichon and Og, Moshe went out. Moshe fought the battle, and here he's telling other people to fight the battle. Elef lamatel chol matos Yisrael tishlachu latzava. Vayimasu me'alfei Yisrael elef lamatel shnei masar elef chalutzei tzava. Vayishlach otam Moshe elef lamatel latzava. Otam ve'Pinchas ben Elazar haKohen latzava uchlei hakodesh v'chatzosos atrua biyado. Vayitzbu al Midyan kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe vayargu kol zachar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu commands Moshe, and Moshe passes it on to other people. He did not lead the army, even though in other cases we saw that he did. Says the Medrash. Okay, says the Medrash. I actually see that I have it also on the sheet number 2, but we've got it for the last source on sheet number 2, sheet number 1, Hakarat Hatov number 1, but it's also in the middle of Hakarat Hatov number 2. Vayishlach osam Moshe Yalkut Shimoni Mabidbar Perek Lamed Aleph. Vayishlach otam Moshe HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omar LeMoshe Nikom Be'atzmecha V'hu Sholeach Le'acherim. He didn't do it. He was told to do it, and he didn't do it. He sent shluchim. Ela al Yedei. Why didn't he do it himself? Al Yedei Shenid Gadel B'Midyan. Remember, where was Yisro? Yisro was in Midyan. So he was basically living in Midyan. Omar Eino Bedin Shani Meitzer Lemisha Asu Litova. Way back, even though Midyan did terrible things to Klal Yisrael, but Moshe felt he can't avenge Midyan because they did him good. Hamashal Omer Be'er Sheshatita Mimenu. We saw this in the Gemara. Be'er Sheshatita Mimenu Mayim Al Tizrok Bo Even. Okay, again, there was Bor Shadi Bay. You had, and again, that was an inanimate object. An inanimate object, no feelings, no emotions. You don't, and we'll talk about why that's so important, even to inanimate object. We're going to talk about that today. the lama shalach Pinchas. Amar Mishi hitchil b'mitzvah chayav legomra hu eshivet chamati hu igbor b'tzasi. At the end of the day, it was Pinchas who killed Zimri to stop the anger over what Midian did. But you see here clearly that Moshe Rabbeinu felt that after being taken in by Midian, it's not appropriate that he should be the one to fight and destroy Midian, even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to do it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to do it. Okay, all right. Any questions?
Yeah, are we going to generally have? It seems like there's got to be a counter position to this, right? That this is all well and good, but if God tells you something and you have a chov of gratitude to someone.
Well, as long as it's got to get done. Again, Moshe Rabbeinu. Well, again, we have two things here. When God says go take the people out of Egypt, he goes to Yisro because he can't just walk out the door. What would have happened? You're asking. Here's your theoretical question. What if Yisro would have said no?
Right. Good. Thank you.
Real question. Okay, Seder. Okay, it's a theoretical question. Okay, the point is, and Rabbi Chaim Shulevitz makes this point. Okay, is that he owed Yisro Hakarat Hatov, he owed Yisro kavod, and therefore you just don't behave like that. Listen, I mean, you want again, I don't know what would have happened if he would have said no, but we have the lesson in this week's parsha. It's a little bit different. But again, Rabbi Chaim and the Alter from Slobodka, they all make this point of Yaakov. He goes to sleep. He has the dreams, unbelievable spiritual accomplishments. He wakes up. Vayikatz Yaakov vayomer achen yesh Elokim b'makom hazeh v'anochi lo yadati. Says Rashi's bothered. Like, why are you saying that? No, you didn't know. And if you would have known, it would have been different. Says Rashi, yeah. If I would have known, I never would have gone to sleep. Says Rav Dessler, wait a minute. You're talking after the fact. It's not before the fact. After the fact, you look all those spiritual accomplishments that you got from going to sleep, the malachim and the future and unbelievable stuff, and you say, but if I would have known that this is Makam HaMikdash, knowing everything I know now, I wouldn't have done it. Says Rav Dessler, you see that you don't violate Derech Eretz. This is from the Alta, from Slobodka. You don't violate Derech Eretz to accomplish things. Okay, Revolvi always used to make the joke about the guy who pushes everybody out of the way so he can get a front row seat in the Mussar Shmuz. Okay, yeah, he wants to hear the Mussar Shmuz. He pushes everybody out of the way. Okay? Yaakov says, I would not have gone to sleep even though I knew all the spiritual accomplishments. If it comes at the price of an improper behavior, this is a real Slabot for it. This is a real Slabot for it. Okay, I heard this from my father more than once. Also, okay, by the way, I mentioned in the chats, my father's yortzeit, so the Chabur should be Lilu Nishmoso. He was a big one on this, by the way. Just it's interesting that the Chabura topic is coming on his yortzeit. Okay. So that's the answer to you, Dan. Is that yes? There is no counterpoint.
Thank you.
There's no counterpoint.
Okay.
We don't see any counterpoint. Okay. So now let's open up Shmos on Perek Yud Gimel Pasuk Yud Ches. This has to do with the miracles at Kriyas Yamsuf. Okay, everybody with me? This is the page that I just sent out. Correct? So it starts with Torah. It's a Chatam Sofer, but we want to just see the pasuk, and then we'll see what he proves from this pasuk. So Perek Yud Gimel Pasuk Yud Ches, a famous pasuk. You probably read it in just without realizing, and there's different perushim on it. Okay. Vahi b'shalach paro et ha'am. V'lo racham Elokim derech eretz plishtim ki karov hu. Ki amar Elokim pen yinachem ha'am b'rotam milchama v'shavu Mitzrayim. Vayasav Elokim et ha'am derech hamidbar Yamsuf. Here's the key phrase we want. V'chamushim alu b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. So the Medrash says chamushim, they were 1 in 5. 80% of the Jews didn't make it out of Mitzrayim. But that's not the simple pshat. The Pashup Pshat Chamushim means they were well armed. Right? Chamushim means they were well armed. Okay? Here, Rashi says, if you see the Rashi, Chamushim, I hope everybody has Chumash with Rashi, because we're going to need a lot of Rashis today. Chamushim, ein Chamushim, ela mizuyanim. They were well armed. Okay, so they're well armed, and now fast forward to Kriyas Yamsuf. The Jews are well armed, and the Egyptians are chasing them. Why aren't they fighting? Why don't they just go fight? What do they take the arms for, if not? And okay, so let's see the Khatam Sofer and the Katav Sofer. Both of them have a similar thing, but they expand it. So the Khatam Sofer writes like this: Chamushim alu b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. Barashi, v'chamushim mizuyanim. Okay, so now he says there's a problem. What do they take weapons for? They took weapons to fight war. Lama be'omdam al hayam lo tziva HaKadosh Baruch Hu libnei Yisrael sheyilachamu im Mitzrayim, and it says Vashem yilachem lachem. And why didn't they fight? And don't think, well, they're still slave mentality. Right after this, Vayavo Amalek. Right after Kriyas Yamsuf, Vayavo Amalek, Vayilachem b'Yisrael b'Refidim, and the Jews fought back and they defeated Amalek. So why didn't they fight the Egyptians? That's the problem, right? V'yinatzchu Yisrael b'derech hateva. So we remember, HaKadosh Baruch Hu never does a miracle when the miracle is not necessary. If you can do it b'derech hateva, he doesn't do it with a miracle. V'le'ezeh tam asa HaKadosh Baruch Hu neis gadol shelo b'derech hateva likra lehem hayam u'lena'er paro v'chelo b'yamsuf. Okay, so why didn't they just fight back? Again, we could say because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to show his power, but on a basic level, why didn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell them to fight like he did by Amalek? Aval be'emet, miderech hamusar, listen to this. Einenu nachon, sheYisrael be'atzmam ya'amdu neged hamitzrim lilchom negdam b'cherev shebiyada. Not appropriate. It's not musardik for them to personally fight the Egyptians. Why? Ki achsadia hayu lahem, right? At the end of the day, but remember, there was a long period of time, right, when the Klal Yisrael was in Egypt for a long time. It was only after Yosef died and a new king, but they were there being taken care of properly for many years. Again, so some of the Meforshim say that was because of Avram and Yaakov. But the simple pshat is also Gera Yitavartzo. You lived in their land and they took care of you. All right, Ubira de Shasis Amaya Mine, right? Lo Tijdi Beikola. You don't throw rocks into the board. So it was inappropriate, says the Khatam Sofer. It was inappropriate for the Jews to be the ones to fight the Egyptians. Lachein Tziva Kodesh Baruch Hu, V'yavo b'nei Yisrael b'toch hayam v'yabasha, v'yivk'u amayim, v'lo yilachamu b'nei Yisrael b'atzmam negda. V'zeh dimashmi'enu kra, hachi musar v'derech eretz. V'chamushim alu b'nei Yisrael, they had lots of weapons. V'afal pichen lo rotza HaKadosh Baruch Hu she'ilachamu imem, el HaKadosh Baruch Hu bikeh hayam lifnei. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was teaching them musar. You got some good stuff. They did bad stuff too, but you got good stuff for them. I'll take care of it in a different way. Obviously, if there would have been no Eitzach, Pikoach Nefesh, of course you fight when there's no choice. But the lesson here is the sensitivity we have to have for people who did something good for us. And then the Ktav Sofer says a very long shtickle, and he brings in a few other things, and I think it's kedai to see. That's why I brought it here. I think it's kedai to see inside the whole thing. Isa b'yalko tehillim, Hayam Ra'a Vayanos. Right? That's right. We say that in Az Yosher. Hayam Ra'a in Hallel. Hayam Ra'a Vayanos. The sea, the Yamsuf. Hayam Ra'a Vayanos. And it ran away. What did it see? What did it see Vayanos? That's the Medrash. That's the question of the Medrash. Mara'a, you know what it saw? The Yam saw Arono Shel Yosef. What's the connection? What is the connection with Aronos El Yosef that the Yam split? Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Remember, they were carrying the Atzmos Yosef. Remember, they were carrying Atzmos Yosef when they left Egypt. Okay? Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yanus mipnei hanes. I'm sorry. Yanus mipnei hanes, meaning the runaway. Dichsiv vayanas vayotze hachutza. If you remember by Potiphar, what does it say? That Yosef ran away. Vayonas, he ran away. What's the connection between seeing Yosef run away from Potiphar's wife and the Yam seeing the bones of Yosef and it split? Uliyashev Omar. Kishinakdim Kushyata Evan Ezra. Al Diamar Moshe Rabbeinu Alav Shalom Hityatzvu Uri'et Yeshuas Hashem. Moshe says, stand, you're going to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to save us. Remember, now we're on Yam Suf. The Lama Hayatzarech L'chol Zeh, Alo Hayu Am Gadol V'Rav. There were 600,000 people. They had weapons. They had enemy. Paro was chased after them with a small army. At the end of the day, Paro didn't chase them with 100,000 people. He chased them with his army. And there's 600,000 people with weapons. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't have to tell them, stand, sit tight, I'll do a miracle. He could have told them, go fight. The nidchak, in case you want to say, this would be a typical modern answer. Well, they were slaves, they didn't know how to fight. And they were afraid to go to battle. That's not true. Right after this, they fought Amalek. So V'tirates, Ki haya tzarech Moshe l'tfila, Ki di'amar anochi nitzav al rosh hagiva. Umuvan lakol, Ki ein teir zeh maspi. What? It doesn't explain anything. Why did Moshe have to stand and daven? Why didn't they fight? You haven't explained to me why they didn't fight. The gam kan haya lo litpalel v'yasu hema milchama b'teva. Moshe could have davened that they should succeed in war exactly like he did with Amalek. The fact that Moshe davened, he didn't need to daven for a nace. He could have davened that they should win the war. Kidapsiv, sheker asus l'shua uv'chol. Everybody understand the problem here. Right? Why didn't they just fight the Mitzri? V'hanal hinei tziva Hashem lo tita'ev Mitzri. We're going back to what we saw last time. There's a special mitzvah not to abuse the Mitzri. Ki gera itav artzo, upirish Rashi, hagam she'inu otcha v'ishlichu zuchur chalayor. Even though they abused you and they killed your kids, mikol makom hayalocha achsanai b'shas adchak. That at the end of the day, when you needed it, they were there for you. At the time of Yosef, at the time of Avram and Yaakov, they were there for you. Umizel amdu chazal b'shas brachos. Liftoach b'chvor achsanya. I think you've heard that before. We always have to express appreciation. And I'm sure any of you have been at a Sheva Brachos. So the first speaker always says, Posin b'chvor achsanya. And usually the third and the fourth speaker also say, Posin, right? Okay? But that's where it comes from, is that somebody who hosts you deserves special appreciation. V'gam samchu al zeh b'shas. Hainu de'amru in shibira d'shasis minei ma'ay lo tishta. That lesson on the fact that the Jewish people didn't fight Mitzrayim, also that you have to have appreciation for your achsanai. The Omar. So now he's going to say, Ki lo rotza Moshe v'gam ha'uma ba'atzma lamod neged Mitzrayim lehargam lefi charav. They didn't want to fight in battle to kill the Mitzrayim. Yan hayu lahem achsanya beitatcha. Since at the end of the day they had achsanya, they had hospitality. That's the word I'm looking for. They had hospitality from the Egyptians when it was necessary. V'lo rotzu liot kefuye tova. Here we're getting this phrase we're going to see many times. The opposite of Hakarat Hatov is kfuye tov, to deny favors. Kfuye tov, an ingrate is a kafui tov. The hayu nisogim achor milasot imam ra, and they were hesitant to do anything bad to the Egyptians. Below matzinu b'chol zman shayu b'mitzrim shemardu b'hem, and we never found that they ever rebelled. Amru chazal b'ksubas. Now he gets into the Gimel Shavuos. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent us into Galus, so he gave us a shvuah not to return to Eretz Yisrael en masse and to stay in Galus. But he also, Hishbiya HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael, another shvuah besides not returning to Eretz Yisrael en masse, is lo yimridu be'umos, gam ki mitzerim lahem. We're not allowed to rebel against them, even though they're causing us trouble, because at the end of the day, we are guests in their place. And this is a big lesson for people now living in Galus. At the end of the day, again, until the anti-Semitism becomes unbearable, Rabbi Feinstein used to call America the Medinat HaChesed. They took such good care of the Jews. Again, it may be changing, but certainly as of today, it's still, we have a lot of appreciation for how well they took care of us. That's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to save them miraculously, because they weren't ready to fight the people who took them in with hospitality. Shemitzrim be'atzmam holchu el hayam v'yad Hashem haytaba. That the Egyptians went. Kadosh Baruch Hu had to take care of them. V'hinei. So what? Oh, we're going about. What does this have to do with Yosef? What does this have to do with Yosef? Vayonas, right? That it says Mara Vayonas Mara Arono Shel Yosef. What does Vayonas have to do with Yosef running away from Paro? So he's going to say here a very subtle thing, but it's basically a Ramban. Okay, I didn't bring the Ramban because he quotes it, and it's a real tricky Ramban. Hine bechina zu mamish matzinu biyosef dichsiv vatitz besehu bevigdo. So she, the Ashes Potiphar, grabbed Yosef's cloak, and what did he do? He left it in her hand and he ran away. He could have grabbed it away. V'yazov bigdo v'yodov v'yonos v'yetz achutza. V'yirgisha Ramban. Lama nas mipaneha. Why did he leave the cloak with her, which created all of his problems? He could have stood up to her. I'll use our modern term. He could have punched her in the nose and grabbed the thing and ran out. Why did he leave it? Why did he run out by leaving it? Because of, this is the Ramban. Ki lo haya miderech eretz. Sheyamod neged Ashes Adona bechazka achar shehitiv lo bedochko. Remember, Potiphar took him out of jail. Right? Potiphar bought him as a slave and treated him very, very well. And therefore, says the Ramban, it was not appropriate that Yosef should get into a fight with his wife. It would not have been derech eretz for him to start fighting with the wife of Potiphar who had taken it, even though she's trying to frame him, she's trying to seduce him. Though it was not appropriate to get into a fight with her. Amazing. This is a Ramban. But now the Medrash becomes clear. Hayam ra vayanas ma ra'a arono shel Yosef. Hainu. What did it see? What did the Yam see in Arono shel Yosef? Shelo hayatzorich likriyas Yamsuf. Shel yicholim lahatzil atzmam miyad oiveh. The Yam saw, I don't need to split. I don't need to split. Just go fight. Go fight the Mitzrim. Why am I splitting? Go fight the Mitzrim. But it saw the Aron shel Yosef, and Ella Arono shel Yosef ra'a, umefaresh amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu yanus mipnei hanes. In other words, from Yosef's running away. Hainu me'oto hatam shenas Yosef mipnei geviroso. For the same reason that Yosef ran away from Ashes Potiphar and didn't stand up against her and fight her. V'lo rotza lamod negda limrod ba v'zeu atam be'atzmo shetzorech shianus hayam v'lo yamdu be'atzmam neged hamitzri. Therefore, the Yam was understood that the Jews can't stand up to the Mitzri. It's not appropriate. And therefore, the only way we're going to save them is by splitting with a miracle. And therefore, after seeing the Aron Shel Yosef, it took a lesson and said, the Jews can't fight the Egyptians. It's not appropriate. They took care of them for a while. They got good for them. And therefore, they realized the only way to save them is to split. This is amazing. These are amazing midrashim. Anybody want to say anything on it, or just, luxuriate in this big chiddush and think how this has to affect our behavior to other people?
Does this still apply today in terms of the Mitzrayim?
In terms of the Mitzrayim, the only thing I could say is that the Mitzrayim of today aren't the Mitzrayim that we owe the Hakarat Hatov to. Okay, but in fact, it does say that the Mitzri can come back into Klal Yisrael after 3 generations. Okay, so what we have, and in general, we talk about today. The Gemara already says that all these nations, Ammon, Moab, Mitzrayim, Nebuchadnezzar came and he mixed up all the nations. There's no ethnic purity anymore. Okay, so therefore we're allowed to say what did they do for us today? What did they do for us? So I think that the America, I think you have to talk about that. Britain certainly took in Jews after World War II. I mean, they weren't so nice to us during the first half of the 20th century, before World War II. But again, it's what is the practical ramification? I don't think we should be thinking globally. I think we should be thinking very personally in the situations we find ourselves on a personal level. Okay? All right, anybody comments, or we'll go on to Bereshis Perek Gimel. So Bereshis Perek Gimel, what do we got there? Bereshis Perek Gimel and Rashi. So we want Perek Gimel. Oh, my Bereshis. I'm juggling too many chumashim here, which you should be doing also. Okay, here's my Bereshis. So we want Bereshis Perek Gimel, Pasuk Yud Beis. And this is, we're going to see more specifically, but we'll just read the Rashi simple. So again, this is after Chava ate from Eis Hadas. She gives it to Adam. He eats Eis Hadas. HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes and says, where are you? Right? Mi yigid lecha Pasuk Yud Aleph. Right? Mi yigid lecha ki eru mata hamin ha'etz asher tzivitih levilti achom mimenu achalta. And what's Adam's response? Vayomer ha'adam ha'isha asher natata imadi hi natna li min ha'etz va'ochel. First thing, of course, you see here, he's not taking responsibility. He's blaming it on somebody else. Victim mentality. Okay? But he could have simply said, ha'isha natna li min ha'etz. Ha'isha natna li min ha'etz. There are two extra words here. Three extra words. Asher natata imadi. Why did he have to say that? Says Rashi, Asher natata imadi kan kafar betova. We're going to see that in the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. It's the last source on the page. We'll see that next time. But right now here we have the first example of kfira betov, kafar betova. Asher natat, your fault. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does him a favor. By the way, there's another medrash that talks about on the psukim Vatomer Tzion Azavani Hashem, where Tzion complains that she's been abandoned after the Jews are coming back to Eretz Yisrael, and the spiritual dimension isn't there. So one of the midrashim says, Tur Amonim b'nei Tur Amonim. You're a complainer, and your ancestors were complainers. Adam HaRishon was a complainer, and I did good and they complain. Yaakov, I did good and he's complaining. Maybe we'll see that maybe towards the end. But the idea here is the first introduction of Kfui Tov. Okay? Now let's take a look. Shmos Daled Yud Ches.
Rabbi Karlinsky?
Yes.
You know, I understand Rashi's pshat, but I don't think it's the only way to understand the pasuk.
Rashi's bothered by three words.
I understand that.
Adam HaRishon could have said, my wife gave it to me. My wife gave it to me. It's not my fault.
But what he's doing is he is qualifying his statement. See, if he would have said it the way that you're saying it, then that for sure would have been, or almost certainly would have been, ingratitude. But what he is saying is, I was relying on my wife because you gave her to me. Why should I have suspected that she was leading me into anything improper? You gave her to me.
That's certainly not how Rashi understands it, and
I understand. It's not how Rashi understands it.
Because what would have been wrong by again? He's trying to unload responsibility, correct?
Not necessarily.
Oh, of course. The Medrash. I mean, the Medrash compares that to what Cain did. All right, when Cain tells right, Hashomer Achi Anochi. We talked about this once. Hashomer Achi Anochi. Cain is saying, "Hey, listen, you're the boss. You created everybody. Why are you asking me to take care of my brother? Why didn't you take care of my brother?" Okay.
Look, I understand Rashi, but it's not necessarily the only way to understand it.
You know what? The opposite. Rashi understands that this was really the problem of Adam HaRishon. Again, he's teaching us a lesson of Kfui Tov. We're going to see this more in the Gemara. But Chazal view this as one of the sources of Kfui Tov. This is one of the sources. And again, the Chazal connected in a number of places. Okay, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does something good and you complain as if it was his fault. That's Kfui Tov. Okay, let's see. All right, so what's the next one? Is Shmos Daled Yud Ches. Oh, I'm sorry. That's what we saw already. That's the pasuk of Yisro. Oh, all right. Okay, I see that I brought it here again on page 2. It's to say we saw this already. Okay, right? We saw this already. So let's open up Bamidbar Lamed Aleph. Wait, did we see that also? Yes, we saw that also. I'm sorry. Okay, so I see I have redundancies here. I wasn't sure what we were going to cover. So we're already now on the top of the second page. Dvarim Yud Gimel. All right, Dvarim Yud Gimel Yud Ches. What's there? Yeah, okay. This is going to be very, very important. And here, what we're going to maybe get into more the, you know what, we'll get the real deep Musar Vort in a minute, because, again, one of the things that's hanging in the background has to be the so many lessons of Hakarat Hatov to inanimate objects. That Moshe, we had that with Moshe Rabbeinu, and we have it with Borsha Tita. Why is this? I understand that you have to have Hakarat Hatov to a person who did you a favor, but what's the value of Hakarat Hatov to inanimate objects? What's the problem? Okay, so to understand that in a much deeper way, we want to see Dvarim Yud Gimel Yud Ches. Dvarim Yud Gimel Yud Ches is about Ir HaNidachas. Okay, everybody knows Ir HaNidachas. The whole city committed Avodah Zarah. The whole city committed Avodah Zarah. Okay, there's no merit. Okay, so then start with Pasuk Tet Zayin. Start with Pasuk Tet Zayin. What are you supposed to do when you find the Ir HaNidachas? The whole city committed Avodah Zarah. There's no mitigating factors. I'm in Yud Gimel Tet Zayin. Hakei takei et yoshvei ha'ir hahi lefi charev hacharei mota ve'et kol asher ba ve'et behemta lefi charev ve'et kol shlala tikbotz el toch rechova v'sarafta va'esh et ha'ir ve'et kol shlala kalil Hashem Elokecha v'ayta tel olam lo tibane od. So they get, okay, so they get the punishment of cherev, which is less than a private person who does Avodah Zarah. Gemara compares the private Avodah Zarah with Ir HaNidachas. So the private person who does Avodah Zarah gets skila. When the whole city does Avodah Zarah, they get cherev. However, there's a much more severe punishment for the city, is that there's an isser, can't have any hana'ah from any of the property, and you have to burn it all, which is not true about a private person who did Avodah Zarah. And then it says, V'lo yidbak biyadcha me'uma min hacherem, L'man Yoshuv Hashem Mecharon Apo. You're not allowed to have any benefit, nothing, no, none of the spoils. V'natan lecha rachamim, v'richamcha v'hirbecha, kasher nishba lavosecha. And God will give you mercy, and He will have mercy on you. What does this have to do with anything? So here's the Orach Chaim. And Reb Chaim Shmulevitz used to make a very, very big deal about this, and this is going to open up the door for us to understand Hakarat Hatov to inanimate objects. So says the Orach Chaim. It's on the top of the second page. V'nasa lecha rachamim v'richamecha. What is this doing here? Kavanat mamar zekah. Lefi shetziva al ir hanidachat ki yahargu kol ha'ir lefi charev. You got to go in and basically execute every person in the city. Ve'afilu behemtam. So, and even their animals. So, ma'aseh zeh yolid teva ha'achzorius belev ha'adam. After all the dust has settled, those people who walked into the city, and there were it's a lot of people because they have to kill the whole city. Those people just did a very aggressive, very what word am I looking for? Help me. A very cruel, not just aggressive act. What did they do? They just killed the whole city, all these people. Right?
Maybe you're looking for the word ruthless.
ruthless, violent. They basically did violence. HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded them to do it. But at the end of the day,
I think it's more than just violence. I think I like what Pinchas says. It's ruthless or cruel. I mean, he said achzari. He means it.
Yes, exactly. So therefore, Kamoshi Sapru Lanu Eshmeilim Kata Rotzchim B'Mamar HaMelech Ki Yesh Lem Chelek Gadol B'Shah Shel Hargim Adam. It's one of the things that they say about Bnei Yishmael. That's how I understand when it says in the difference. Yishmael, the characteristic of Yishmael, Kulam bozes in Mammon, Vehem bozes in Nefashos. Right? Bozes in Mammon means people want money. How much money do people want? As Paul Getty said in the 1950s, how much money is enough? Just a little more. All right? Bozes in Mammon. People want so much money, they don't even know what to do with it. They just want to have more money. Bnei Yishmael, say Chazal, they're bozes in Nefashos. They kill people even if it doesn't accomplish anything. It's a bloodthirsty nation. Okay, that's what Chazal said about Bnei Yishmael many centuries ago. So they're Hargin Bnei. It's part of their culture, and it creates very corrupt personalities of violence. The nichusam mehem shorish harachamim v'hayu le'ichzor. So when you have to do this, it undermines the midah of mercy. And it amplifies the midah of cruelty. That's the word I was looking for. It's cruelty. So the people who executed everybody in the Irani Dachat, there's an element of cruelty that becomes ingrained in their personality because of what they did.
Do you think it's Dafka? He used the word rotzche rather than, right? I mean, that.
Well,
there's never...
again, Rothstein, he's trying to make the point here. This is his language. It's not the language of the Torah. Meaning, at the end of the day, they killed people. They killed thousands and thousands of people. Okay? So that ingrains a cruelty in your personality. Therefore, so God is promising a counter force. To undo that, he's promising them special rachamim. Hagam shateva yolid bahem achzorios. Mekor harachamim, God is the Mekor harachamim. Yashpia behem koach harachamim. Mechadash. Remember, one of the qualities of the Jewish people, give the three qualities of the Jewish people, Baishanim Rachmanim, right? And Gomle Chasadim. Baishanim, Rachmanim, Gomle Chasadim. So it's one of the DNA, in the DNA of the Jewish people is Rachamim. Well, this got undone. So therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to reinstate the Rachamim. Koach harachamim mechadesh levatel koach achzorios shenolad bahem mikoach hamaisa. At the end of the day, the action influences the personality. The famous Sefer HaChinuch, Achrei HaPeulot Nimshachot HaLevavot, that a person's actions influence their personality. And therefore, they did actions of cruelty. It has to have an impact on the personality. The Omro Verichamecha. Ha'ir b'zeh shekol zman she'adam hu begerer teva achzari k'mo kach yenaheg Hashem imo she'ein Hashem merachem ela l'rachma. But in general, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't give rachamim to a cruel person. You're a cruel person, midah keneged midah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu behaves with you with cruelty. However, think about this for a minute. They were doing a mitzvah of uprooting Avodah Zarah from Eretz Yisrael, the whole city. They were doing a big mitzvah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded them to do it. And what does it say? Yes, you did it, b'tzivui Hashem. But at the end of the day, that act is going to impact your personality. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to come back with a special bracha to undo the personality defect that's created by those actions.
And why don't we see this by other wars of annihilation?
It wasn't a question of just killing for the sake of killing and not touching their things. There it was defense. There was self-defense.
I'm talking about Midian, for example.
So again,
that was a mitzvah. This was a mitzvah. What's the difference?
What's the difference? You tell me.
I don't know.
Want
to say it's because some are Jews and some are non-Jews?
Now you're on the right track. I don't know. It's because we are avenging what they did to us. We're avenging what they did to us, and again, we're not being taught to do it in a way that they were taught to do the Irani Dachas. The Irani Dachas is again also. By the way, this was not an army. This was civilians. In other words, who is executing these people in Ir Nachas? Civilians. Who's fighting Midian? Soldiers. Soldiers and war is very different. Even though even soldiers in war, there's certain rules and certain impact. But there's a difference whether soldiers in war, okay, are coming because you're basically doing something that another nation did to us, as opposed to killing your fellow Jew, and you're not a soldier, you're an executioner. Okay.
Well, the 12,000 who fought against Midian were all volunteers, weren't they?
They were soldiers.
Oh, no, they were soldiers. No. If you read we just read those psukim. All right, mate elef lamate. Every nation had to give 1,000 soldiers. But you're alluding to another question that you're not asking, but it's also mentioned in the discussion here, and that is, wait, doesn't Beis Din have executioners? Beis Din has executioners. Okay, so the Gemara does say that the executioner, it affects him, but somebody has to do the job. But here we're talking about taking civilians, and they have to go back after this is over. They have to go back to their civilian daily life. They're going back to their daily civilian life, and therefore it's saying here that is going to have a negative impact on their personality. Why is all of this important? Now let's get back to it. So here's the deep thing about Hakarat Hatov to inanimate objects. Hakarat Hatov is a midah in the personality. All right. And maybe let's ask what generates, and we'll see this more in the later sources. What generates kfui tov? Why does a person, Rav Dessler talks about this, why does a person resist appreciation? You know what? It's coming up in 2 weeks. Let's talk about the Chazon Ish in Emunah B'tochon talks about this. It's an indirectly connected, but it's connected. So Yosef's in jail. He's there illegitimately. He's in jail, and then the Saramashkim and the Sarofim are thrown into jail with him. They have dreams. He solves the dreams. One of them is going to go back to Paro, and Yosef says, "Please remember me. I'm here. I should be taken out. Please ask Paro to take me out." What happened for that?
2 years.
2 extra years. Says the Medrash. Okay, again, people want to say because he asked twice instead of asking once. Chazon Ish doesn't like that. There's no source for that. No real source. There is a source. Okay, in the Medrash on the Psukim. Okay, where it says that a person who has trust he praises the person who's boteach b'Hashem, and he says that's Yosef because he had bitachon in Hashem. And it undermines the person who had bitachon in arrogant people, rahavim, asher botach berahavim. Rahavim are arrogant people. Says the Medrash, that's also Yosef. Why? Because Yosef asked the Sar HaMashkim, who was an arrogant person, to please remember me to Paro. Says the Chazon Ish, what's the pshat? Arrogant people never feel that they have to pay back a favor. Basically, what was Yosef asking? He was asking the Sar HaMashkim, Hakarat Hatov, look what I just did for you. Please do me a favor back and remember me to Paro. Says the Medrash, that's an arrogant person never pays back a favor. And therefore, says the Chazon Ish, Yosef's hishtadlus was inappropriate hishtadlus because it had no chance of working. The Chazon Ish says it's desperation. Okay, a Baal Bitachon is never allowed to take hishtadlus that has no likelihood of succeeding. It's an inappropriate behavior. So the idea is that an arrogant person never has Hakarat Hatov. Where do we see? When did the Sar HaMashkim finally mention Yosef?
When it will help him.
Only after...
What motivated him? It wasn't Hakarat Hatov to Yosef. What motivated him?
Paro's dream.
What?
Paro's dream. So now he gets credit for...
So it was self-interest. An arrogant person's only interested in himself. Okay? So an arrogant person, Reb Dessler talks about this in the psychology of a kfui tov. Arrogant people don't like to owe somebody. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz called it a mechuyev. You don't want to be beholden. You don't want to owe somebody. So when somebody does you a favor, you right away have to find a way to not owe him. I deserved it. He had his own interest. He really did it for himself, not for me. Arrogant people never like to acknowledge favors. They always like to deny favors. They don't want to owe anybody anything. Okay, so that's a personality defect. It comes from arrogance. So when the Torah is teaching us, you even have to have Hakarat Hatov to inanimate objects. The inanimate object doesn't need your Hakarat Hatov. You need to express Hakarat Hatov even to an inanimate object. If you got positive results from anything, an inanimate object, and you don't appreciate it, it's a defect in your personality. So people who deny Hakarat Hatov, it's indicative of a corrupt personality. This is the lesson. And that's why Hakarat Hatov is so important, because without it, what you're really doing is you're demonstrating a defect in your personality. It's arrogance, it's kfui tov, okay? And think about that. All right? When you come across people who are trying not to have Hakarat Hatov, where's that coming from? Where's it coming from? Right? You got benefit from the water cistern, and you don't pay any attention to it. That shows that you have no sensitivity. Okay?
What are examples today of Hakarat Hatov to inanimate objects? Like, I've always imagined it's sort of like it teaches me a lesson. I should even, I should cover the challah, right? This isn't Hakarat Hatov, but like cover the challah, it's a lesson, right?
Cover to the challah, not to embarrass the challah.
Right. So obviously we don't worry about embarrassing bread, right? But rather we make this as a physical demonstration so we can talk about it with children, right? And like, oh, look, we're really careful about not embarrassing people. I'm not worried about my bread on the table being embarrassed.
You're phrasing it in a way that I don't want to agree with you. I don't want to agree with you. Again, if you're doing it right, then you're realizing that it's my midah has to be a midah of sensitivity to everything. It's a sensitivity to how my actions impact others. Well, if my actions impact the challah is inanimate. The water cistern is inanimate. But you know what? If I just walk away, it shows a lack of sensitivity in my personality. Okay, again, you're not doing it for the bread and you're not doing it for the water cistern. And Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't doing it for the dirt when he didn't hit the dirt. But hitting the dirt would have demonstrated a coarseness in his personality, a roughness in his personality. That's why Hakarat Hatov is so important. That's one of the reasons why we say Zeh Kol HaAdam. The Balei Musar say Hakarat Hatov Zeh Kol HaAdam. That defines the person. It defines what kind of a person you are. And if you find ways not to acknowledge, it shows what kind of a person you are. You're looking for ways not to have to acknowledge the favor.
Right. I like that. I'm wondering, like, how can I express that today? Like, what would be an example in my day-to-day life? I'm in the kitchen or whatever. Like, is it something that we view as having a practical thing? Or is that we look back and use that as inspiration for now why we should be, better.
I'm going to try to find the section. Everybody has Michtav Me'Eliyahu? If I want a section in Michtav Me'Eliyahu, do I have to put it up on a document, or does everybody have the Sefer Michtav Me'Eliyahu?
I don't have it.
You don't. All right. So I'm going to have to. There's a section in Michtav Me'Eliyahu where he talks about this, because he talks about it in his Kuntras HaChesed, is that every person is supposed to be a nosein, a giver. Okay, but if everybody was a giver, then there's nobody to give to, right? So he talks about the difference between a taker and a receiver. Okay, there's a difference between a taker and a receiver. A receiver takes resources so that he can have more to give. Okay, but sometimes somebody gives you something and you don't have anything to give back. So what makes you be a non-taker when you get something is Hakarat Hatov. The fact that, okay, I got something from you. I don't really have anything physical to give you back, but I can give you back appreciation. I can give you back Hakarat Hatov. It's, so to speak, the coin of return, because I received and I don't want to be a taker. So every time I get something, I have to give something back so that I'm not a taker. And Rav Dessler says the thing you can always give back is Hakarat Hatov. Maybe I'll try to look for that section. Okay. Let's just see if we have time for Bamidbar Chaf Aleph. Oh yeah, I don't have my Siftei Chachamim here. Well, we'll see the Rashi and we'll see the Siftei Chachamim next time. Okay, Chaf Aleph Lamed Daled. Bamidbar, Chof Aleph, Lamed Daled. Yes. Oh, okay. No, this is all right. We're going to have to spend more time on this. This is one of Rav Chaim Shmulevitz's most famous ideas. And it's very, okay, let's just, we'll just open up with the problem. Here's the problem, okay? So Moshe is fighting Sichon and Moshe is fighting Og in the desert, okay? So says the Pasuk Lamed Daled, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, al tira oso, ki v'yochon atati oto vet kol amo vel artzo, v'asita lo kasher asita lesichon melech ha'emori. And when we go back to him being told to fight Sichon, that phrase al tira does not exist. He's told don't be afraid of Og, and he's not told don't be afraid of Sichon. Says Rashi, where did this don't be afraid come? Why all of a sudden does he have to be told don't be afraid? What was your default? What was the default of being afraid that you need to tell him don't be afraid? Says Rashi, and we'll pick this up next time with Sifsei Chachamim. Al tira oso. Shahaya Moshe yare lihilachem. Why? Shema tamod lo zchut shel Avraham. Shenemar vayavo hapalit hu Og shepolat min harifaim shahiku kedar laomer v'chaverav be'ashtarot karnayim. Rak Og melech habosha nishar miyet harifaim. So Og is the one who let Avram know that Lot was captured, so that Avram went out to save Lot, and Hakarat Hatov to Og made Moshe afraid. Maybe he has chus for what he did, and therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu says you don't have to worry. We'll see the Sifsei Chachamim, we'll see Bereishis, Yud Daled, Yud Gimel, and Rashi there, and we'll see what an amazing chiddush there is here that Rav Chaim Shmulevitz used to make it, and I can tell you he talked about it in relation to Hakaras Hatov to soldiers explicitly. I'm going back to the 1970s, okay? And there are people today who don't like it, but he said it, and it's compelling. So we'll pick it up next time with, again, have a chumash with Sifsei Chachamim and a Gemara Avodah Zarah, okay, is what we're going to be doing next. And there'll be a couple more sources. We'll probably finish it up next. Today is Sunday, so I'm sorry, wait a minute. Where am I now? Because I have a Wednesday. I'm sorry. This Wednesday, I won't be able to have a Chabura this Wednesday. I'm sorry. I have a conflict with with an engagement. So Wednesday, there's no Chabura. We'll pick it up next Sunday. Okay. And we'll probably finish the topic next Sunday. And then it could be the following Wednesday. I also have a yeshiva conflict, but just a week from today, we'll finish Bezrat Hashem. So just remember Wednesday, no Chabura.
So is the Rab Chaim Shmulevitz in print like in the Sichos Musar?
I have to check. Okay, I think that in the old version where they had the stencils, they left it out. But I believe that it's at the very end. It's at the very end of the new version of the Sichos Musar. Okay, they put all of them together. The original version had 3 different years, and what they did is they combined all of them together into independent shmuzin. And I believe that they put it in the end because the shmuzin were given in Lamed Aleph, Lamed Beis, and Lamed Gimel. Exactly, Baruch Hashem, exactly when Rabbi Hirschfeld and I and Rabbi Feigemann were in Mir Yeshiva, we heard these shmuzin firsthand. Lamed Aleph, Lamed Beis, Lamed Gimel. And then at the end, they put them all together, but I think that they added something in Lamed Daled, even though I think he said it. He may have said it in Lamed Daled, but I think I also heard it in Lamed Gimel. So you'll take, if you have the new version, take a look at the end. I'll find it, but we're going to see it. We're going to see where it comes from next time with these Rashis and the Sifsei Chachamim, okay, and the Rashi and Bereishis. Okay, Rabbi, so Wednesday no Chabur. I'll see everybody next Sunday.
Thank you.
Okay.
Shkoyach.